Power is not a stone throne, but an invisible chessboard. Many believe it belongs to the strongest, the richest, the cruelest. They are mistaken. True power lies in the subtlety of those who change the rules of the game. Like the wind that moves ships without being seen, the wise one sets the terrain before the battle begins. Machiavelli taught us, whoever chooses the criteria decides the winners, and whoever masters the measure masters men. Imagine an assembly, a courtroom, a family meeting. Everyone speaks, everyone argues, but if before they begin, someone decides the criterion of judgment, they have already won without raising their voice. Machiavelli's trick is to invert common logic. It is not strength that imposes truth, but the chosen truth that shapes strength. Thus, whoever sets the field conquers the destiny of others. The common man fights within the rules handed to him. He prides himself on his courage, his resilience, but forgets he is like a gladiator battling to entertain the emperor. Meanwhile, the wise one writes the order of the combat, determines the arena, and sets the conditions. This is the secret that separates rulers from subjects, leaders from followers. Not to fight, but to shape the stage on which others will fight. In every dispute, there are two types of men: the one who spends blood to prove himself and the one who spends silence to impose the conditions. The first is remembered for his bravery, but also for his exhaustion. The second is remembered for his cunning, for having won before the battle even began. Machiavelli whispers, "Choose the criterion, not the sword. Thus even enemies will fight in favor of your victory." In politics, a prince need not be the most loved nor the most feared. It is enough that he decides which virtue will be exalted in his kingdom. If he declares discipline as the supreme value, every act of indulgence will seem weak. If he elevates loyalty as the criterion, betrayal becomes the worst of sins. Whoever controls what is virtuous controls the judgment of men and the balance of glory. The same happens in businesses. Imagine a board of directors. Each defends their numbers, their achievements, their profits. But if someone declares that the true criterion is sustainable growth, all the numbers that shine quickly and shallowly become small. Thus, without raising their voice, the wise one repositions the field and forces others to fight under their measure. This is the trick. Even at home, power is exercised by defining what matters. A father who decides that the greatest value is education need not argue at every meal. The criterion is already set. Every gesture will be judged by that measure. Thus, he governs without shouting. Strength does not come from imposition, but from the invisible framework that guides all gazes. The trick of inverting power begins with what we call priority. The secret lies at the beginning, when men believe there is still room to discuss. It is at that moment that the wise one discreetly sets the agenda. He does not impose his will abruptly, but gently suggests criteria that seem reasonable to all. By the time they realize, they are already fighting under the measure he planted. Instant power arises from the invisible seed of defining the terrain. Many wonder how to invert power in the face of someone stronger. The answer lies not in strength, but in redefining the game. If the enemy is swift, change the arena so that patience becomes the criterion. If he is rich, make morality the supreme value. If he is charismatic, make discipline the measure. Thus his weapons become useless, and his once grand strength works in your favor. Machiavelli warned that politics is not a field of pure virtue, but of molded perceptions. The one who defines what seems virtuous wins faster than the one who bleeds in battle. Inverting power is not a miracle, but an engineering of the mind. Whoever plants the criterion reaps obedience, and whoever reaps obedience need not shout, for they already govern in silence. Think of card games. Victory does not belong only to the one with the best hand, but to the one who sets the rules before the game begins. Machiavelli's trick is to realize that men are distracted by the apparent struggle and forget the framework that sustains it. The true master need not contest every point. He simply alters the measure by which all will be judged. And in doing so, he turns defeats into victories. When two armies face each other, victory does not belong to the strongest, but to the one who chooses the terrain. A smaller troop on elevated ground defeats a larger one in a flooded field. So it is in life. When you change the basis of judgment, you transform your weakness into an advantage. The trick is invisible but devastating. Whoever defines the field already governs the outcome before the first blow. Mature people know it is futile to waste energy in endless arguments. The secret is different. Introduce a criterion that transforms the field of dispute. If everyone fights for money, speak of honor. If everyone defends numbers, speak of legacy. Thus, they compete according to your measure, and you, without raising your voice, alter the meaning of victory. Silent power is the most feared. The trick of inverting power rests on 3 pillars: anticipation, definition, and patience. To anticipate is to see the battle before it begins. To define is to set the criterion that will be accepted. Patience is waiting for others to bind themselves to that criterion without realizing it. Haste betrays, but calm conquers. The wise one plants the rule like a seed and reaps an entire field of obedience. Politics is a theater of perceptions. The actor who shouts may move the audience, but the director who decides the plot controls the play. Machiavelli's trick is to always position oneself as the invisible director. It matters not if others seem to shine, for every gesture of theirs reinforces the story you wrote. This power is as immediate as it is invisible, for it acts not on hands, but on the eyes that judge. When someone challenges you, do not step onto their terrain. Change the field, shift the framework. If they demand speed, propose reflection. If they flaunt wealth, value sobriety. If they show toughness, exalt compassion. They will find themselves trapped in a criterion that weakens them. The trick is not to defeat their strength, but to make it useless. Thus, their fall seems inevitable, even as they believe they are winning. There is a subtle art in appearing just while manipulating the scales. Machiavelli teaches that the prince must always give the impression of virtue, even when acting with cold calculation. This is because men do not see the truth, only appearances. Thus, the trick of inverting power is to choose not only the measure of judgment, but also the appearance that legitimizes it. Strength hides behind the mask. The man who knows how to invert power does not argue with the crowd. He allows the crowd to accept his criterion as if it were natural. Once accepted, every word spoken by others reinforces his victory. The trick is so effective because men believe they fight for themselves, when in fact they dance within the framework imposed. This power is discreet but absolute. Whoever decides the field decides everything. Think of ancient tribunals. It was not the most eloquent who won, but the one who defined the rules of judgment. If the law was shaped beforehand, the sentence was already written. This is the trick that spans centuries. Defining what matters precedes the fight. Machiavelli merely translated it into immortal words. Instant power lies not in shouting louder, but in setting the criterion before the dispute. The wise man does not exhaust himself in petty arguments. He observes, waits, and at the right moment, changes the measure. It is like the chess player who sacrifices a piece to rewrite the logic of the board. The trick of inverting power is not to win every move, but to transform the meaning of victory. When others realize it is too late, they fought according to the measure you defined. Mature life teaches that power is not measured in theatrical gestures, but in silent decisions. Machiavelli's trick is simple. Change the battlefield. If you cannot win with strength, make muscle irrelevant. If you cannot win with eloquence, make words superfluous. Thus, the strong lose themselves in their own confidence, and the wise discreetly have already won before the fight begins. The crowd admires brilliance but follows the invisible measure. Whoever defines the criterion guides collective admiration. If courage is exalted, the timid fall silent. If patience is proclaimed, the impulsive condemn themselves. The trick is not to convince each one, but to shape the measure all accept. Thus the prince governs effortlessly, turning what others value into weapons in his favor. Machiavelli knew that power is not a static good, but a flow. It moves where the criterion points. When a leader alters that criterion, he redirects the river without fighting the current. The trick is to understand that men do not question the source of the measure, they simply follow it. Thus, whoever changes the basis of the dispute directs all human movement, like a shepherd guiding a flock. Instant power is born not of chance but of preparation. The wise one observes men, understands their vices and virtues, and decides which to elevate to the throne. When he chooses, all accept. A man's strength ceases to matter when the measure values another quality. Thus, the trick is not magic but calculation, a change in criterion that turns giants into fragile shadows. When someone tries to humiliate you, do not respond on the field they chose. Change the framework, define another value. If they seek to prove their wealth, value wisdom. If they flaunt youth, exalt experience. By inverting the terrain, their advantage becomes useless, and the crowd sees them as small. This is the Machiavellian trick, not to deny the other's strength, but to turn it into a public weakness. True cunning is making others believe it was their choice. The wise prince does not impose brusquely, but leads gently. He presents the criterion as something obvious, reasonable, inevitable. When they realize, all are judging themselves by the measure he planted. This is the invisible triumph, the trick of inverting power without being noticed, maintaining the appearance of justice. In battles of the mind, the field decides everything. An orator may be eloquent, but if the criterion is precision, his poetry is useless. A warrior may be invincible, but if the criterion is patience, his haste destroys him. The trick is to set the parameter the other does not master. Thus every virtue becomes a burden, and every strength an obstacle. Whoever controls the criterion governs even the strongest. The common man enters disputes without realizing he has already accepted the enemy's field. He fights, suffers, and even if he wins, he loses. The wise one refuses this mistake. He does not engage in imposed battles, only shapes the terrain. Machiavelli's trick is to invert, make the enemy's field a stage where their own strength becomes useless. Thus, govern the outcome without wasting a single blow. There is power in words, but even more in the silence that decides what will be heard. The wise prince does not speak too much, only defines what will be remembered. If he declares loyalty as the greatest virtue, every speech of betrayal becomes ruin. The trick is to stay silent when all shout, and to change the criterion when all believe they are fighting. This inversion is instant, because it acts at the root of perception. Machiavelli's trick is not to win by crushing, but by shaping. True victory is not conquering lands, but hearts guided by an invisible measure. Whoever controls what others call virtue has already won without a sword. Thus, power is inverted. The weak become strong. The strong lose themselves in their own vanity. This secret spans centuries and still governs mature men today. Instant power is born of keen observation. Whoever sees the dispute before it occurs already knows which criterion to plant. Machiavelli's trick is to prepare the field in silence, like a gardener choosing the soil before the harvest. Thus, when men believe they are fighting, they merely confirm the destiny written. Victory reveals itself not in the final effort, but in the principle that shaped everyone's direction. There are those who think strength is unbeatable, but strength only matters where it is the criterion. Change the measure, and it dissolves. A strong arm means nothing when patience is the measure. Youth loses value when wisdom is exalted. Thus, the trick is simple: invert importance. Machiavelli teaches us that men live by appearances, and by altering what seems great, you make it small. The wise man does not seek everyone's approval, only control of the measure. When he defines the supreme value, all others adjust to it. The trick is to invert the stage. Turn what seemed a disadvantage into an advantage. Like the craftsman shaping clay, the leader shapes judgment. Victory lies not in shouting, but in silently defining what will be exalted. Thus, he governs without lifting a hand. In ancient courts, intrigue decided more than the sword. The advisor who suggested which virtue deserved praise determined the future of princes. Machiavelli observed, "Whoever masters the measure needs no crown." The trick is to invert power through perception. If all believe obedience is a virtue, rebellion condemns itself. The crown is fragile, but the molded criterion is eternal. In every human group, there is a struggle for recognition. Machiavelli's trick is to offer an invisible criterion that turns recognition into obedience. Whoever says what matters need not fight for the prize, for they have already written its definition. Others in pursuit of glory merely serve their victory. Thus, power is exercised not in the effort to impose, but in the cunning to redefine others' value. Maturity reveals that the world does not change by force, but by the invisible measure. Whoever controls the measure defines what is progress, what is decline, what is honor, what is shame. This is the Machiavellian trick. Invert power not by shouting, but by the whisper that redefines what all accept. Whoever perceives this secret never looks at life with naivety again. They already see the hidden stage. Power gained by the sword can be lost by the sword, but power born of defining criteria becomes unshakable. The trick is to understand that, even without soldiers, whoever shapes values governs. Machiavelli knew kings fall, armies vanish, but the idea of what is virtuous endures. Whoever defines that idea conquers a power that needs no walls to stand. The man who masters the trick of inverting power does not exalt himself, only observes. He knows the crowd is guided by symbols. If he changes the symbol, he changes obedience. He need not destroy the enemy, only redefine what victory means. Thus, every applause, every criticism, every gesture ends up confirming his invisible strength. The trick is to win by the framework, not the sword. Think of the war of words. The orator may be brilliant, but if the criterion is clarity, his eloquence sounds empty. The trick is to shift the fight. Do not contest the enemy where he is strong. Create a field where his strength becomes weakness. This inversion happens in silence, but its effect is devastating. He loses without understanding how, and you win without needing to raise your voice. Machiavelli wrote for princes, but his lesson spans centuries. The trick of instantly inverting power requires no crown, only vision. By defining the criterion, you shape the collective mind. Whoever controls the mind needs no weapons. Thus, true power is invisible but absolute. It is the power to decide what matters, to rewrite victory. And whoever learns this secret never loses again. The wise man does not face the enemy head-on, he disarms them from within. When he changes the criterion, the rival keeps fighting, but against their own shadow. This is Machiavelli's trick. Invert power not by violence, but by intelligence. Thus, the adversary wastes their strength in vain, while you govern the outcome with serenity. The greatest victory is the one won without needing to fight. Youth seeks to prove itself. Maturity seeks to shape. Those who have lived know that energy alone is not enough. Direction is needed. The trick of inverting power is to give invisible direction to others' energy. Like a chess master guiding the board, the wise one directs the fight without moving many pieces. He wins by the terrain, not by direct confrontation. Machiavelli called this virtue disguised as necessity. There are moments when silence is more powerful than 1,000 words. When all expect your reaction, do not react. Propose another measure. The trick is to make others believe their victory depends on your measure. When they accept, they have already condemned themselves. Machiavelli knew the prince need not win arguments, only decide how they will be remembered. That is inverting power. The seemingly invincible strength always has a blind spot. The trick is to turn that blind spot into the new criterion. If he is swift, value calm. If he is charismatic, exalt consistency. Thus the field changes, and what was an advantage becomes a burden. The wise man does not attack head-on, only shifts the measure. Machiavelli shows us that power is won not with shouts, but with redefinitions. The prince must seem just, but act with calculation. Men do not see the truth, only images. The trick is to shape the image and the criterion at the same time. Thus, even when acting with self-interest, he appears to act for the common good. Instantly inverting power is using perception against the enemy. He believes himself virtuous, but in the measure you defined, every gesture condemns him. The trick requires no haste but precision. The wise one waits for the moment when all believe the field is fixed, then changes it. This inversion is devastating because it catches everyone off guard. Like flipping the table suddenly, it redefines what matters. Machiavelli teaches, do not fight for what is already lost. Fight to change the meaning of victory. Thus, every defeat can be reversed. Instant power is born of understanding the human mind. Men want approval, want virtue, want to be remembered. The trick is to choose which virtue will be the criterion, and all bend to achieve it. Machiavelli understood there is no need to force men, only guide them by their desire to seem just. And in that desire, they end up serving what you planted. In life's battles, many lose themselves because they accept fighting on the enemy's field. Machiavelli's trick is to refuse this trap. If you cannot win there, transform the framework. Whoever defines the stage masters the outcome. The enemy may believe they won a small dispute, but the greater measure condemns them. Thus their strength fades, and their glory turns to emptiness. The inversion is silent. The wise prince never despairs in the face of apparent defeat. He knows he can invert power by redefining the criterion. If he lost in wealth, proclaim the virtue of sobriety. If he lost in youth, exalt wisdom. If he lost in numbers, value discipline. In every field, victory can be resignified. The trick is to remember that the measure is never fixed. It can always be shaped. The greatest secret is not to fight, but to seem to fight. The Machiavellian trick is to let others exhaust themselves in small battles while you change the measure of the war. Thus they believe they have won, but in the final judgment, victory is yours. The inversion of power is instant because it acts at the heart of the dispute, meaning. Whoever controls meaning already controls men's destiny. Machiavelli's trick teaches that even defeat can be disguised as victory if the measure is changed. The wise one never accepts the imposed judgment, he creates his own. Thus, even when losing the visible battle, he wins the invisible war. The enemy boasts, but history will be told according to the criterion you planted. And in men's memory, more than in the present, lies power. Many believe power is possession. They are mistaken. True power is defining what possession means. If owning gold is the criterion, the rich govern. But if honor is the criterion, the rich are beggars without souls. The trick is to instantly invert perception, change the invisible value. Whoever achieves this governs even the most powerful, for men live not by facts, but by the meanings that shape them. Maturity shows that arguing is a waste of time. The wise one does not argue, he defines. The trick is to accept the other's speech, but plant the criterion that invalidates it. Like a silent judge, he governs the tribunal without being noticed. The enemy speaks, exalts himself, surrenders, but the sentence was written before the dispute. This is the invisible power of instantly inverting the game, winning before even fighting. The common man seeks proof. The wise one seeks frameworks. Machiavelli knew that value lies not in the sword, but in its interpretation. The trick is to create the interpretation before the action. If violence occurs, say patience is a virtue. If haste reigns, say wisdom is calm. Thus any act is born defeated. The criterion redefines victory, and power changes hands without noise. Instant power is not sorcery, it is calculation. It is the intelligent use of human nature. All want approval, all want to be seen as virtuous. The trick is to redefine what virtue means. When all accept your definition, they act according to it, believing they choose freely. But in truth, they only obey. This is Machiavelli's legacy, to lead without seeming a tyrant. The prince who masters this trick can turn even a crowd against its idol. Just change the criterion. If all praise wealth, declare sobriety as virtue. The people, ashamed, will condemn what they once exalted. This is invisible power, turning applause into silence and silence into acclaim. The trick acts quickly because it strikes at the root, the value by which men judge. Life teaches that whoever controls the past controls the present, and whoever controls the criterion of judgment controls the future. The trick of inverting power is to rewrite the measure as if it were collective memory. The enemy may have won in numbers, but if you plant that quality matters more, he becomes small. Thus, every apparent triumph unravels in the invisible measure that governs men. Many leaders fail because they believe they must win every dispute. Machiavelli's trick is not to dispute, but to invert. Strength lies not in winning today, but in shaping how tomorrow will remember. Thus, true victory is not immediate, but inevitable. By changing the criterion, you plant a destiny. The enemy shouts his glory, but is already condemned to the silence to come. This is true power. Patience is the invisible sword. Whoever rushes reveals their field. Whoever waits changes the field. The trick of inverting power is not to react, but to choose the moment to change the measure. That moment transforms the game like lightning cutting the sky. Sudden, irreversible, devastating. The enemy still believes he fights, but he has already lost, for he fights according to a measure that now condemns him, and you govern in silence. Inverting power is the art of mind engineers. The trick is to understand that reality is not fixed, but shaped. Whoever changes the criterion changes reality. Men live not by what is, but by what they believe to be. If you define what they believe, you govern. Thus instantly inverting power is not a gift of the gods, but a skill of the wise, and whoever learns it is never weak again. Machiavelli's trick to invert power is as old as human nature. He knew that men do not see the truth, only the filters offered to them. If you control the filter, you control the gaze. Thus, by redefining what is virtue, the prince changes reality itself. The enemy may believe he won, but victory belongs to the one who wrote the measure of triumph. The wise man never confuses brilliance with dominion. Many shine, but only confirm the light of the criterion another planted. The trick is to let men seek glory within the measure you defined. They tire, they show off, but in the end, they only strengthen your invisible authority. This power does not show itself, it is exercised. It is instant because it shapes the basis of the dispute before it blossoms. Mature life reveals that every conflict is a theater, and the stage decides more than the actor. The trick of inverting power is to redesign the stage without being noticed. The enemy may have talent, courage, eloquence. None of that matters if the stage exalts another value. Thus every gesture of his becomes small. Machiavelli reminds us, whoever defines the stage governs the play, and whoever governs the play governs the end. Men chase symbols, but few understand who crafts them. The Machiavellian trick is to craft the symbol before the race. If you decide the crown is the prize, all kill for it. But if you declare virtue is invisible, all are lost. Thus, your victory requires no weapons, only definition. Instant power is directing others' desires toward a target you chose. When all believe the fight is for the sword, the wise one fights for memory. The trick is to plant the criterion that will be remembered. The enemy may win the visible battle, but his glory dies with time. The planted criterion endures, and in men's memory, it alone defines who was victorious. Thus, true power lies not in the moment, but in what is eternalized as truth accepted by all. The prince who masters this trick governs even in silence. He need not impose himself, only change the criterion. When he does, men adjust themselves. Some believe they obey themselves, others destiny, but all follow the invisible measure. This is the essence of instant power, not direct control, but the engineering of perceptions, and whoever controls perception controls the world. The enemy always believes he fights for himself, but fights for you. This is the effect of the Machiavellian trick, turning the adversary into an instrument. When he accepts your criterion, every act of his reinforces your victory. He may resist, but he is already within the game you wrote. Thus his strength works against him. This power is instant, for it acts at the heart of the dispute, meaning. Many ask how to apply this trick in everyday life. The answer is simple. Observe before acting. Discover which value guides the dispute and change it. If at home all fight for attention, declare respect the supreme value. If at work they compete for wealth, plant the idea of legacy. In minutes the game changes. The inversion is not fantasy but method, and whoever masters it governs in any scenario. Power does not belong to the loudest, but to the most silent. Machiavelli's trick is to turn silence into dominion. When you change the criterion, you need not exalt yourself. Just wait for others to confirm your measure. They exhaust themselves, you reap. Thus, true power is invisible, discreet, and devastating. It is exercised not in battles, but in the invisible measure that decides what victory is. Here is the final lesson. Machiavelli's trick to instantly invert power is always the same. Define the measure. Whoever controls the criterion governs the outcome. Strength, wealth, youth. None of it matters without the measure that validates them. If you plant the criterion, you plant the destiny. And whoever plants the destiny governs men. Thus, true power, is silent, inevitable, and eternal as time.